Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Vince, and I've been doing admissions since 1989 and college counseling since 1998 in California.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. Joy has a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree from North Carolina State University. She works in private practice in Raleigh as a mental health therapist. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. This week in the news, Vince and I discuss two topics with some depth. We talk about a Columbus Dispatch article entitled, Miami University Considers Cutting 18 Majors in the Face of Low Enrollment by Aaron Glynn. And we also take on the question, if a student has a slight dip in their grades from the fall of 11th to the spring of 11th, should they still apply early action? Or should they wait and apply regular decision and hope for their grades to go up in the first semester of 12th? It's a very tough question that I'm sometimes asked. So Vince and I discuss that as well as talk about the Columbus Dispatch article, and we'll run that. It's a 60-minute session Vince and I did, so we'll run 30 minutes on this Thursday and 30 minutes the following Thursday. Our question from a listener, Damian, asks a great question about a student who had a grade dip due to learning differences. And he wants to know whether the student should reveal the learning differences to colleges. And he also wants to know whether revealing the learning differences makes the student dead on arrival for highly rejective colleges. Susan and Lisa tackle this Speakpipe question head on. Our interview will be the final segment with Rick Clark, the AVP at Georgia Tech, and Brennan Barnard, Director of Admission at Con Labs, and they're talking about some of the hot topics in college admissions these days. And it'll be our final segment of Lisa recounting her recent visit to the University of Dayton with Linda for our college spotlight. Vince, what's up, man?
Not much. Busy time.
Busy time. You survived November 1?
I did, and I can't wait till 11:30 is over, 12/1, and then January 30th. D-Day. I call it D-Day.
You know, we may as well bring this here. You and I were talking off air before. You're noticing more families coming at the last second, seniors starting in the fall. You know, do you have a theory on that? Because I don't think you're the only one who would say that.
I don't like to step into stereotypes, but I will say it's generally parents who have boys. And there's sort of an promise. And then the student starts to realize like, oh, Johnny over here is done. And why is Johnny done? And then they share the information. But typically this process, and this is part of what I don't think colleges really understand, it is so cumbersome that just to manage, a good list of, 6 to 8 or 10, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, So I think I would encourage parents, especially those junior parents and sophomore parents out there who haven't made a decision about, getting some support, that you should pull the trigger as soon as possible. Because generally, I'm hearing from people who we probably would have worked together really well much earlier, but the student can't pull off a portfolio with 12 to 15 pictures, artist statement, and all those essays in 4 weeks. It's just not possible.
Yeah, I it's funny you said something I was going to say as well. I'll say in a second, but as you and I were talking, I think there's 4 types of people that fit in that bucket. There are people who really just didn't have any idea what the timing was at all. Like a lot of times that's first gen or international or just new to this country. Sometimes it's not, but there's that group. Another group, are the procrastinators. They knew they should have done it. They just procrastinated. The third group are the people that were do-it-yourselfers, and then now they're realized that, this is more complex than I thought, so they feel like they're in over their head.
Right.
And then the fourth group, I would call them like, I'm just making a name up here on the spot. They can get you in trouble, but like the soccer mom whisperers, like they're hearing all, this is the time when they're like talking to people and they're finding out other people are like getting help. And so like, they're wondering like, maybe I need to do that. But I was going to say for the tip, and you already really said exactly the tip that I wanted to give, which is, if somebody's on the fence, like, should I start now or wait? Most of the time, they really are better off starting now, even if it's light counseling. And I don't know if this is true with you, Vince, but almost every time when I work with a second student from a family, they start earlier. They're like, I learned from the first one to start earlier. Yes. I pretty much never hear somebody say, I learned from the first one to start later. In fact, I don't remember hearing that. But they do, they do make decisions to start earlier for the second one. Now, this isn't when should you start, because it does depend on a lot of factors. One of the big factors to me is, are you looking at just staying local, regional within a couple hours? Or are you doing a national or regional search where you're going to be looking at some places that might involve hotel, airfare, rent-a-car, meals? And you're hoping to maybe visit some schools before you apply. Those are all factors. Are you a recruited athlete, or do you hope to be a recruited athlete, or musical theater or something that's super competitive? Like, there's a lot of factors that go in. There's a couple questions that frustrates people sometimes that I probably don't give them straight answers on. One is, how many schools should I apply to? You're not going to hear me say 8 to 10, 12 to 15, 6 to 8. Because there's just so many factors that is contingent on. You remember Anika.
Yeah.
Anika was the co-founder of this podcast and the co-host of the first 171 episodes. It is her voice that you hear on our transitions to each section of this podcast. I worked with her daughter, both on her boarding school placement and her college placement. She already knew she wanted to go to the school her mom worked at. Like, when she was in college, because she wanted to go to HBCU, and she wants to be a vet. A&T's got the top school for vets. She grew up on the campus. Both her parents went there. Mom works there. She knew she wanted to go there, and I happen to know that she was going to be extremely strong applicant. She got the presidential scholarship.
Wow.
So it took work for me to convince her to have 2 other schools on her list. But then there's other people that really do need to be up into certainly double digits because of maybe they need money. They haven't been to that many schools. Perhaps they are applying to a very competitive program, or money is a very big factor in their college decision, and they want to have financial options. A student like that may be in the teens and at times the mid-teens or even the high teens in terms of the number of schools they apply to. And so it's, you're never going to hear me nail a precise number down for someone when they get asked that question all the time. How many schools should I apply to? And then also, when should the process start? That varies too. If your kid's not ready, and just going to be like me growing up, my mom trying to get me to do piano lessons, man, she wasted a lot of money. If it's like that, then, I can't give you a time if your kid is not ready. And then also really, where are you looking too? And how complex is it? Like locally, geographically, to me, that plays a role. If it's just going to be, most of the people usually that come to us are not just looking just in their backyard. I find they're usually looking more than that, but that plays a role. So there's a lot of factors. So but in general, I think that people should start earlier than they do. If they're hearing something telling them, should I start now? They should start. It can be very light. It can be really light stuff that you're doing initially. It doesn't have to be all full blown in. I know you start even earlier than me. You got a lot of people that start with you in ninth.
Yeah.
I like to start with people. Well, occasionally meeting. I like to. I mean, I can meet with you in middle school one time, like once a year, twice a year, just to check in. But as far as like actual official counseling starts, I like to do that after at least one semester in 10th, somewhere between one semester in 10th and the end of the sophomore year. I like to do it. I like to take advantage of the summer of the rising junior year.
Yeah.
For most people, for that, most people who are looking at maybe at least going 6 to 8 hours away, if not more, and open to all the schools kind of in that range. Anyway, I'm probably going too off on that, but I think if you're listening, and by the way, starting doesn't mean you have to go hire a private college coach. Starting for you may mean we're going to do this as a family, but we're going to get real serious about it. So, because I'm not of the belief that everybody, can or should work with somebody independently. But for those who are inclined to do that, or for people that are doing it on their own, there's still the same rule applies that you should start. Most of the time, people should start earlier than they do and if they're trying to think, do I start now? Do I start now? Yeah, at least light start. Like, let's work at getting a list. Because everything's going to flow out of that list. Like, let's get an initial list. Let's do some assessments around, I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, man. You know how I am. Get me started, I'm in trouble.
Okay.
So we agree on the tip. We don't have the same tip. And so the admissions vernacular is just the word SUP, which is short form some people use for the supplement, the SUP. We're talking about what I like to call custom questions or college-specific answer. I just like to use that term because I feel like it enforces that it's important. But I know literally even on the Common App, it says this school does not have a writing supplement. So I don't stand in judgment of people who use that term. How can I when most colleges use it and the Common App uses it as well, and it's the most commonly used term. But some people just call it the SUP.
The SUP.
It's the SUP, and so that's our admissions vernacular. And then our big number, I'm trying to go back to that article you and I recorded a while ago. These schools are just, remember that, dripping and devouring money? That was our last our last in the news that we did, and that one had a whole bunch of really, really, really good big numbers in it. I've kind of been pulling them, like I mentioned, how Kentucky spends $805,000 a day on their physical plant for more than a decade. We talked about how University of Florida has more than 50 people in communications with the title of either director, associate, or assistant director, up double since what they had in 2017. But today it's UConn. University of Connecticut spending is up 73% from 2002 to 2022. And when you look at the, enrollment, there's a big gap between the spending and the enrollment, the biggest gap of any flagship. And so what does that mean? It means you're going to have to start hitting families up for the money, because if your enrollment's not matching your costs, then you got to pass more costs on to those who are paying. Yeah. Any thoughts on anything we've said? I feel like I'm just going on here in a monologue, man. I hear from you as much as me today.
I think I just wanted to go back for a quick second. I have like tips for seniors would be, make sure, I would say that you should send your thank you before the end of the month for those who are writing you recommendations, because there's no better than reminder than to say thank you and put it in a note. And that's a great thing for junior parents. If you should figure out your testing plan, and if you're going to do some test prep, if you're going to start studying, you got to know your plan. You got to know, is it ACT or SAT?
Yeah.
And then for sophomores, this is the year that colleges are really looking at your grades. You've added a little bit of rigor, so you want to make sure that you've got everything under control, because you get to add more rigor in your junior year if your sophomore year is successful. So if you're needing some help, you're feeling like, I don't get these DBQs and AP World History, it's time to speak up and get some help.
Those are all good tips. I want to ask you something that I'm wrestling with.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a student you're working with and they are not coming off the best spring of 11th in terms of grades. They're not terrible, but they weren't great.
Right.
I'm not asking about early decision. They're looking at early action schools.
Yeah.
There's two theories out there. You know where I'm going already. One theory is don't apply early action so you can show upward grade trajectory in the 12th grade and let them see a good solid semester of 12th. The other is more and more schools are differentiating between EA and RD. They have a higher yield with EA over RD.
Yeah.
Mostly for a couple reasons. One, it's in general, it's somebody who's more serious about them.
Yeah.
And secondly, they can get them into their funnel. And then when you get them into the funnel, you can get them on campus. You can have a students call. You can do all that, right?
Right.
So the other approach is have them apply EA, because if there was any chance at all of them being competitive, maybe they will get deferred, but that there's still some signaling there to the school that I applied EA to you, versus if they were completely out of range, they were just going to get probably denied anyway.
Right. Right.
What is your thinking? Because that's a really hard question. I had a family ask me this from Long Island in a session yesterday. I've thought about this a lot. My answer has kind of changed a little bit over the years, but I still go back and forth because I think you can make a strong case. And a lot of it does depend on how bad the grades are. Like if you're talking really bad, I think we would all agree you don't want to come in with a terrible spring junior transcript as the last grades people saw.
Right.
But let's just say a scenario of like, let's say a student is like normally, let's say they're like 3 A's and 2 B's, and then they got 3 B's and 2 A's.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like basically a drop in one of the 5 core classes. How do you advise that family? Do you say go ahead and apply EA because schools know they have a higher yield and maybe they'll defer you, but you still there's still some benefit and some signaling on your part there? Or do you say, let's just not go EA? And, how do you handle that?
I think the best answer is this is where school contacts really, really fits into the bigger picture. So you would want to have a conversation depending on the school that you're coming from. Your school counselor will have a good sense. Now, if you're at a big school or at a school where there's no sense of how students fare because there's just counseling doesn't exist, then there aren't general rules. But when we're talking about, like you mentioned a scenario where the difference was like 1 more B than usual, I would say it is better to show you're organized, to show that you have an interest, and to get yourself on that defer list and have the option of them offering you potentially ED2, because that's usually what happens, to measure interest, and in between you can go and visit. So I think if they're that close and we're looking at a marginal difference in grades, it's better to go EA generally.
Yeah. And
then wait to see how they respond. And if they put you on defer, then you have a chance to show some luster. And what I mean by luster is something that's going to help you stand out. So stronger grades in 7th semester, your senior year, first semester. Maybe you've won an award or you did something really spectacular in the fall or summer. You can share that with them, and that might get you through the door. So I think if we're talking about marginally weaker transcript coming out of junior year, it's still better to apply early action. And if you don't know the school contacts, and then hopefully your senior year shows strengths that will get you to admit by March or whenever they relook at you.
That was an A++ answer, by the way. I mean, partly because I agree with you. And I've changed in my thinking on this. Like I used to say 2 reasons not to apply EA in the past. One is you just throw school on your list at the last second. You can't put together a good application. Like, and then the second reason was you're coming off a dip in grades, even if it's a little bit. But because I'm seeing schools be more yield conscious and more research indicating the yield's higher for EA versus RD, I've moved toward the thinking, basically exactly what you articulated. But the other reason why I really like your answer is a lot of times I talk assuming that people are in public schools without college counseling, but that's not always the case.
Right.
And if they are, then go to the school context where they have institutional knowledge of that school, even that you're looking at. I was thinking about that as soon as I gave my answer, that tip about starting early. Because if you notice, I said two things. I said, not everybody should work necessarily with a private coach. And then I said, or you may be do it yourselfer. And I thought about it right after I said that. Or you might have a college counselor at your school,
right,
that you can work with. But even that I work with a lot of kids that are in that situation. Most kids are in public school, so I kind of go to the default of public in my thinking a lot. But it's important to also remember there's a large group of people, and we probably have a higher percentage than most, just because if you're crazy enough to listen to 3 hours a week of college admission stuff, you're like all in on education.
Yes.
And you're the kind of family that is willing to pay for if you have the resources, or maybe your kid gets a need-based award to attend an independent school. So our listenership, I'm sure, is a higher percentage of kids in whether it's Catholic school or, Christian school or just independent, non-religious affiliated than the population at large. So it's always important to include that in the answer. That's why I partly said A++ because I agree with you on that, but I really liked how you also brought up that school context piece as well. It's very important that, and these are some of the points Susan was bringing out when we were talking about NACAC that were valid points. Like the school counselor knows the school context.
Yes.
And that's very, very valuable information. It's funny, like when I was doing the school side in Atlanta, I mean, there were schools, University of Richmond was one. I had a relationship with the University of Richmond where I could pick up to probably could even do more. A dozen is the most I did. I could pick a group of kids, 12, 13, 14. We had 14 one time, but 2 bowed out. And I could just tell them, these are great kids. And they would fly all of us in, pick us up with a limousine, cover everything expenses. I didn't even need to send a transcript.
Wow.
I could just, because of that school relationship had been established. They're like, you know us, you know what we're looking for. You pick the kids, we'll pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on one side. On the other side, I could go all the way to the other extreme and pick places that would never visit us or we couldn't get a foot in the door. So you do have that school context. I just wanted to use one example from me doing it on the school side.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good stuff. I also want to add something I noticed when I was editing. I never mentioned public school college counselors. Some public schools have a college counselor, not a guidance counselor, but a college counselor with specialized college training. And college counseling is the main part of the job description. While I was on a fly-in visit to see the Colorado schools last summer, I met a college counselor from Highland Park High School in Highland Park, Texas. And they train all of their guidance counselors to be college counselors. So I didn't want to omit this important group of college counselors. Well, Vince, I can talk to you all day, man. You're like the female Julia and Susan over here. I can talk to you about this stuff all day when we're in the newsing. But we got an article. To discuss. So why don't you describe the article and then let's dive in.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
All right. Well, this week's article comes from the Columbus Dispatch, and the title of the article: Miami University considers cutting 18 majors in the face of low enrollment. Aaron Glynn from the Cincinnati Enquirer did an excellent job, and it's interesting how one thing I'll say about the article as I explained what it was about was there's an interesting parsing of words. So the title says cutting But in the second line of the article, actually what Miami is doing, and again, that they're trying to do a lot of things in this messaging, is they're thinking about consolidating 18 major programs because they need to reduce a deficit of 36 million, and there's 18 majors where probably 40 or fewer students are in a 4-year program studying those programs. They're in the humanities, and the reasons why she articulates in the article: less students nationally, more competition between Ohio colleges and universities. And Miami, just for those of you who don't know, Miami University of Ohio, not the one in Florida.
Yeah, that's really important, because people are going to confuse that with University of Miami and Coral Gables and ACC and the big football part. Yeah, this is very important. They're talking about two different schools. Go ahead.
Yes. So Miami University of Ohio, which is a gem. Like I'm saying, it is a beautiful school.
Beautiful campus. Really strong business program.
Very strong. Apparently, everybody's in business. And when I think of it, I always believe that every university and college has cousins. Miami University of Ohio is like SMU, is like USC, like USC is like Miami of Florida. So they're all very similar, but less international students are going. There's a price issue. So as if they have to raise prices to attract students, that is not a good way to manage enrollment issues. And then there's a question about value. The other thing that they realized that there were several majors that they had less than 40 students enrolled over 4 years, and that 72%, and we've had this discussion before, when you're applying to the University of California, you'd swear there were 5 majors in the universe. And
sure. Why don't you share what you're referring to here, Vince? Because we've said it before, but people might not have heard that or remembered it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So every year, the University of California does their debrief, their counselor conference. Every director gets up there and tries to signal, without dousing people's dreams, 80%, 90% of our students apply in psychology, computer science, engineering, business, econ, whatever. It's always somewhere between 5 and 10 different majors. But at Miami University of Ohio, they realized that 72% of their students are clustered in 30 majors. So,
and they offer what was it, 100 and 130
40.
Or something? Yeah.
140 different majors, which is vast. But one of the things that I think is probably a better way to think about this particular subject is they're thinking about how do we use the humanities and pivot, because part of the thinking that comes behind a strong liberal arts university is that you have to use multiple skills to solve problems. So they're thinking about consolidating some of these majors to make the students who choose to go into these areas more competitive for their future lives, whether they go to graduate school or pursue professional careers, which I actually think is a smart idea, because we have to think students now are using multiple skills and thinking and subjects to create change and innovate in the world. So I don't think that this is a negative process. There are definitely negative results. There are going to be some people that are laid off. There's going to be some professors who may not have a job. But I do think in terms of students, I do think that we have to make humanities majors as attractive as possible. And in order to stay competitive, you have to help students think about ways to use their interest in the humanities in ways that are going to appeal not only to their intellectual life and mind, but also to those who might hire those people once they graduate. So I see this as a continuation of higher education having to evolve, because we're living in a world where we're going to have to evolve a lot. We're going to have to think about space travel. We're going to have to think about living in an environment that's increasingly hostile because of global warming or whatever you think the issue is there. And then how do we help people manage their political and social lives in a way that as the world's population continues to grow and there's limited resources, I think that humanities majors in the consolidation of the way that they learn those particular skills can be better served to think critically, to write critically, and speak well when they are talking about their ideas. So most people would see this as, oh, wow, Miami University is going to cut 18 majors. But rather, my hope is that what the result is for Miami is that there's a better way for those humanity majors to come together and really articulate to others what their major means, because there's been a more thoughtful process about these sort of niche interests coming together to put something together that can really solve problems.
Well, I wanted us to talk about this article because this is the conversation that's happening at school after school after school after school after school right now. And so this is not just a Miami of Ohio story. No. In fact, the article talks about Ohio Wesleyan cut 18 majors in 2020. University of West Virginia got a lot of publicity because this is a flagship school.
Right.
And they cut 28 majors and 143 faculty positions last month. So there's several things going on here. You know, we've talked about this ad nauseum. 2.5 million less kids in college right now. We've gone over all the reasons why that's true in the past. That creates financial ramifications when that happens. And it's why you're seeing a lot of the behaviors that you're seeing now can be explained because, you know, far less kids going to college and the number of colleges aren't closing that quickly. So, you know, it's difficult. Now, I'm torn because part of me agrees with what I heard you say, what I thought I understood you say, which is there is a business reality side of a school.
Yes.
Which is very difficult to justify paying for faculty if kids aren't showing up in their class. That's just the business reality, and I understand that. For those of you who are interested in this topic more, when I interviewed Martha Saunders, the University of West Florida's president, I like to interview a president every now and then. We've done only a few of them. We talked at length about this. When does a program get scrapped? When do you jettison a program? She used the term sunset. I like that with a little softer sell. And she said, you absolutely hate to sunset a program. You do everything you possibly can in your power, but sometimes you have to sunset a program.
Yep.
I understand that, and I don't want to be naive about the business realities. But here's the other argument I want to make. Overall, I think as a society, we're not valuing the humanities and the social sciences to the extent that we can and should, and they're invaluable. And a lot of employers know how important it is that people can write well, because you're talking about writing.
Yep.
You're talking about foreign languages.
Yep.
You know, you're talking about history.
Yep.
You're talking about philosophy, which is really one of the best disciplines to improve your critical thinking. So you're talking about critical thinking. So I also would argue that we haven't made the case for how valuable they are. And we have just caught up in STEM. And as an institution, as a school, I think if you put more effort, and there's things you can do. You can bring speakers in that can talk about listening. You can bring employers in that can talk about some of these key skill sets that you get in those courses are what we look for.
Right.
I mean, if you hear Mark Cuban, he goes on and on and on and on about how valuable the humanities are, and he thinks there's going to be the pendulum's going to swing all the way back. And as a guy who hires thousands of people, he's always looking for that skill set. Friends, this concludes the first part of Vince and I in our conversation about a number of things, what's going on at Miami of Ohio in terms of cutting classes, as well as whether a student should apply early action if they have a slight dip in grades in their junior year. We hope you'll join us next week for the final part.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
Hey, Susan, how are you?
I'm good, Lisa. It's nice to be with you in an early morning to talk about important things.
Yes. Well, I don't know when this will air, but Susan and I are recording this the last weekend before the November 1st deadline. So we are just swapping horror stories and good stories too.
You're right. You're right. Parents, heed our observation. Don't be one of those seniors and parents who suddenly load a whole bunch of essays and applications on your overscheduled college counselor right before a deadline.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then in like an epic, bout of really bad timing, I apparently decided to get COVID this week. And luckily for my students, I'm doing okay. But, that's the kind of like thing you need wiggle room for. Like when your college counselor goes out of commission due to illness, you have to have some time. So, but anyway, we have a great question from Damian about learning differences. So we can play that, and then Susan and I are going to discuss it.
Hi, Mark and team. I love your podcast. This is Damian Waters, and I had a question about revealing learning disabilities. I have a son who's a senior in high school, and during the first semester of junior year of high school was diagnosed with ADHD. It impacted his first semester of junior year grades, where he got 3 Bs, and the second semester, his grades went back up to his normal, which is mostly A's and 1 A minus, and that was after some new study techniques and medication. My specific question is twofold. Number one is, should we be revealing this? We planned on doing so in the additional information section to explain the blip in the grades. And number two, does this automatically make him dead on arrival for highly selective institutions such as Ivy Leagues in terms of revealing the learning disability? I've heard mixed things from different admissions folks. Thank you.
Okay, Susan. So what did you think of Damian's question?
Well, Damian, you're very articulate, and I think you're speaking what a lot of parents think in their high school journey with their kids who hit some kind of wall. It can be for a lot of different reasons. It can be, the kind of late diagnosis of a medical or learning situation that's impacting grades, or taking kids out of sports that they were playing, and just where suddenly there's a bend in the river, and the kind of high level of concern that any flaw, any aberration in a student's academic and personal journey will be, Damian used very strong language there, the DOA, and which I recoiled when I heard it, because I know that's in the heart of a lot of parents, that suddenly lifelong plans may have been thwarted. But that's, it's kind of unusual to get through childhood until junior year of high school and not have a life-changing event of some kind. As a college counselor, but also as a reader of applications over the last couple of years, it's just inevitable. And colleges, while they have to be very systematic about how they evaluate kids' credentials, they are also human beings who do their very best to be empathetic with kids and families that have been going through circumstances, many of which are out of their control. In the past years, aside from diagnosis of medical and learning conditions, we've just seen such an enormous number of circumstances impacting on kids' achievement. And it doesn't mean that the kids are less worthy of attending great colleges. It may change somewhat how they are evaluated, but, Damian certainly represents parents who suddenly have, the tremendous fear that all that hard work is is going to be for naught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because I think that Susan and I were joking before I pressed record, but when we talk about being DOA at these very highly rejected schools, like frankly, almost all kids in the United States and the world
That's
are
right.
DOA at these schools because their admissions rate are so incredibly low. Thank goodness there are so many other amazing schools who would love to have Damian's son with only those 3 B's to blemish.
That's
his
right.
record.
You're absolutely right. And truthfully, when the first time a college or university reads an application, the first round of elimination basically is assigning the ratings that college uses in its rubric, and deciding then on a recommendation for that application. If the student is clearly qualified to go on to the next level of evaluation, they kind of go into the green light category, and that may mean, depending on the university, that they go into a review by academic program or by institutional priority group. Everybody does it a little differently, and truthfully, they're not going to tell you, parents and kids. They just have a very standardized process for that first review, getting academic, personal, and fit ratings on the file according to a previously established rubric on which the readers have been normed. So while there's always a little room for personal preference and response, it's not as much as a lot of families think it is. That there is a standardization when, especially with colleges now reading, anywhere from 10 to 100,000 applications, right? That initial review has to work quickly and in a equitable fashion. It's kind of like sorting. So applicants are sorted. Now, at this point, a relatively small number of applicants are eliminated. It's really the students whose academic qualifications don't predict success in the curriculum. Anybody at that point whose academic credentials predict that they could do the work will move on to another level. It's kids who may have thrown in an application saying, well, I know I'm not going to get in, but I just want to be able to tell everybody that I'm in the applicant pool, that there's a certain status along with saying, and parents, you get caught up in this too. You get a lot of mileage of saying where your kid's applying. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I wish students would focus more on the colleges where they have a fighting chance, but you know what, it is what it is. And applicant pools and colleges do invite a lot of this on themselves. But so the real admissions decisions get made as the application moves through different channels in the process, whatever those are. And at schools where I've read applications, they go into geographic piles, they go into majors or academic divisions. If a college reads for liberal arts, reads for business, reads for engineering, reads for nursing, they may have separate small admissions committees for those programs. Many liberal arts colleges don't do it that way. They're just admitting you to the whole darn college so that you have a chance to explore and make that decision. But even then, a college will heed the major interests, the academic interests of the students, because they will then look for fit for major. And that is a rating in most reviews is alignment, which is both academic and non-academic with the major interest, or some schools call it the rationale for the major. And there's actually a question in the supplement to that in many cases. Kids with diagnoses don't necessarily get put into a separate pool. Sometimes they do, because there's very dramatic diagnostic information that will help the admissions committee understand that student's potential in a way that's different from other applicants. So a diagnosis isn't glossed over, but it's also it doesn't separate that student out in a positive or negative way. So it just becomes part of the larger context in which the application reader strives to understand the student's potential and record of achievement, but also whether or not the college is a good fit.
Right. And I think that, in this particular case, Damian's son received a diagnosis of ADD in his junior year, which, as we've noted, is not typical, but it's not, impossible. It could be that, Damian's son is so darn smart that it just he was able to overfunction over his ADD until he hit junior year and then realized that he had this issue. So I don't think there's going to be a bias from admissions and disclosing that. I do think you probably have to explain like how that whole story played out. So that it doesn't look like, oh, well, like an excuse, like rather than it's a process of figuring something out and making some corrections and learning from that as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to put it. The disclosure, if a family chooses to disclose a diagnosis, they've got the student in their writing needs to focus on the learning, the process then by which they internalize that information, and focused on skill building, skill development in new ways that help them become successful. If I was reading Damian's son's application, what I would be interested in knowing about him in his application, when I saw that transcript, maybe that was all A's and suddenly there were, first of all, a couple of B's is not the end of the world.
No.
Right. My guess is that Damian's son had moved into higher level classes that were more rigorous and that maybe called for a level of critical reading, writing, thinking that was a step up. That's often what happens in the junior year. Right. We see that in practically every student we work with, and certainly now in every application I read, we look for that trajectory of both rigor and achievement. So as a student takes higher level classes, it's revealing of what their real interests are, because kids tend to choose the most rigorous classes in the areas of strength and interest. Right. So often there's a predictor there for, if we see, moving into advanced calculus and, physics, electricity, and magnetism, then we sometimes, we know we're looking at either a comp sci kid or an engineering kid and building strength upon strength as they move toward that engineering application, right? Or if we see, the debater, the high school debater who's taking every advanced social science class that she can get her hands on, then we know we're probably looking at a social science major, maybe someone interested in law, business, research, scholarship in the social sciences. But it's a story. The transcript tells us a story, and it's not unusual in the junior year to see a very smart kid kind of hit the wall. And you know what? If they don't, we say, well, okay, but we know they're just not telling us. There should be a big step up in the junior year in suddenly what the student, homework now isn't just memorization. It's critical thinking. It's original thinking in whatever discipline you're interested in. It could be in studio art. It could be in chemistry. But there's a shift. And that's what we like to see from the college side, because we know that's a student who is building skills in a way that really are going to predict success in college. So no student should feel apologetic for that transition. They should own it. They should, if they feel it's important, they should ask for support from faculty who watch them grow, who watch them power through. I think the wrong way to tell this story is, oh, I started taking medication and now everything's back to normal.
Right. Because that helps, but it also, you have to have like a study strategy. You have to have advocacy. Right. Those are the kinds of things
Yep.
self-awareness, insight that the story could have that could make I think, a really good story.
I agree completely. And that's the magic word there, Lisa, is self-awareness. It's like the discovery of one's own learning style, taking responsibility for one's situation. So self-awareness, taking responsibility, and then turning those two qualities, those two areas of character to what does success mean for me? So we don't want success to just be the A when we're reading an application. We actually want it to be the struggle.
Right. You prevail over something that was difficult. Yeah. And then you learn from it.
And the book I would recommend to Damian's dad is Angela Duckworth's book called Grit.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget the full title. You could look it up while I'm thinking of it, Lisa.
It's one of those. It might be.
It's one of those long titles, but
right.
It's brilliant. It's about resilience as a character trait, and it's a word we use a lot now. But
I've got it. Hold on. It's grit, the power of passion and perseverance.
Ooh, thank you. And that is just a magnificent research. She's director of the Character Lab at the University of Pennsylvania, and is really one of the leading scholars now on personal qualities as predictors of success, and teaching and growing personal qualities in kids and teenagers that become building blocks for academic success, but also for personal well-being and good mental health. And because, Damian's son, this is not the first big challenge / setback / mountain he's going to have to climb.
Sadly, no.
Yeah. And that's what life is. Our success is measured as we go through life, not in those straight A's anymore. None of that matters anymore.
Yeah.
As life goes on, it's about how we respond and grow and bring others along with us to a higher place.
Yeah. So, I don't know if that answers Damian's question, but I think we're saying disclose it in a way that shows positive personal growth and perseverance. And, maybe have a very well-rounded list of schools. If you're going to apply to some of those really highly rejective schools, make sure you have a lot of other great fit schools on your list, and everything is going to be fine.
Yeah, that's it. It's all about creating great options. Now, one thing Damian's dad has to realize is that at his school, especially if he asks teachers or his school counselor to support him in telling this journey, that they have to be given permission to speak diagnostically.
Mm-hmm.
So they cannot, no school may legally disclose a diagnosis. And I'm not saying that they even have to, because what they're going to be doing is describing their experience with Damian's son. And that's what colleges want. That's much more important, actually, than anything else that anybody can say about a student in their recommendation, is a description of their experience in class, in lab, if they've worked with the student outside of class in some capacity, the science Olympiad team coach or the debate coach or soccer coach. Sure, they can talk about their personal stuff, but teachers need to stay focused on their experience and be descriptive. And so they can do that without even referring to a specific diagnosis. And when I read an application where the school personnel disclose diagnoses, I'm horrified.
Mm-hmm.
Because the student may not have. Right.
You have to really get that all.
Right. It has to be in writing from the student if he's over 18, but from the parent if they're not over 18. And I think the best thing Damian's son could do is sit with the people he's going to be asking for recommendations and talk through what he hopes they will support, corroborate, describe.
Mm-hmm.
in their own language, in their own experience.
Right.
I think that's a wonderful step, what you don't want a teacher saying is, this student had a miraculous whatever second semester of junior year, and not speak descriptively about what that meant in the physics classroom, in the history classroom, because it's all about, how is the student developing those college level academic skills of critical thinking that are going to carry over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it sounds like that Damian's son has done a great job of figuring himself out on this. That's, I don't know if that gets you into a high rejective college or not, probably not, but that is not nothing. That is something that carries you through in life, wherever you go.
That's right. That's right. And Mark, and you and the other co-hosts, Lisa, have done a wonderful job in recent podcasts of breaking down kind of who's getting into these highly rejective colleges. And, just to the parents, it's when acceptance rates are so low, by the time the colleges admit the kids that meet particular institutional priorities, there isn't much room left for other spectacular, unhooked kids.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that if that's a goal that you're always having and you're so likely to not meet it because of what you just said, and that structures your entire high school experience, like I feel like there's a lot of things that can get lost in that. My oldest daughter drives me insane, but she is wise in some ways. In her 8th grade year, we came to North Carolina on vacation and we went to the Duke campus. And she's like, oh, I'm going to go to Duke. And then freshman year came around and she wasn't taking any ADD meds at this, or she was, but she was just not really happy about it. She wasn't acknowledging her own ADD at that point. That was just my ridiculous, problem that I was imposing on her. But so she got a couple C's in freshman year. And at that point, Duke was really off the table.
Yeah.
But in a way, it was kind of good because then, we were just like, well, what else is out there? And, she got a B again. It was like not a huge deal. At least it was better than that C you got,
Right, of course.
And so I think she had, a lot more fun and was able to explore a lot of other things than some of her friends in high school who were just on the treadmill,
Yes.
Trying to get those perfect grades, have the perfect things for the hope of getting into some of these schools. And I don't know, like she would probably tell you that she's perfectly happy with the way things turned out. So there's something to be said for just backing off of the struggle, I think.
I agree. And I think parents have to think about their child's long-term success and talk a lot as a family about what success means in terms of, not have the transcript be the nucleus of that definition.
Right.
To talk about physical health, mental health. What are the personal qualities, the qualities of heart and mind that parents hope their children will develop and show? The applications I read where students' commitment to service is something that clearly was grown and modeled from an early age. That it's just extraordinary when you see a student who isn't just racking up the community service hours so they can join National Honor Society, or they're just raising money for some cause, but they're never actually in the trenches with the people who have the needs. Right? There's an amazing quality of character that comes through in some of those applications. I read an essay for one of my students the other day who has been serving with his mother in some capacity since he was a child, since he got to the age where they were allowed to bring kids. And I forget what the situation was, but the essay was kind of about what he had learned from those years of watching his mom, and how this wasn't for her just a box she checked on her resume of my life needs to be validated because I'm doing this stuff. But that when colleges are reading about students and the context in which they were raised and choices they've made and goals they've set, and the bends in the river, these big bends in the river that occur, there's kind of a coherence and a I don't even know the word, a beauty to some of those stories that lifts that student's application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that's like at the end of the day, like I hope that no one is on their deathbed thinking about their high school transcript.
Oh,
I really hope that. If only I'd studied. No, I'm hoping they're saying, I feel good. I helped some people. I learned some things. I had important relationships. Like we talk about, and of course, like it's our jobs, like college admissions and this and that. But in the larger scheme of life, like it's not the most important thing.
And it's not something that anyone's ever going to remember later on.
Right.
We, we want to be judged by the quality of our character.
Mm-hmm.
We want to achieve too. And what I say to kids is, I'm like, as you're pinning your hopes on these highly rejected colleges, give it your best shot, but, hope for the best and plan for what I think might even be better.
I love that.
Could be a match.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you want to do in college is be really successful in a million different ways. And you know what? No door is permanently closed. If you want to go to MIT, go get your PhD there. If you want to go to Princeton, go get your master's. You can, if it means that much to you, go to an undergraduate school that is really going to bring out your best and set you up for a next step that's going to be absolutely right for you. And, you can still get that college on your resume if it means that much to you, later on.
And it might not.
Well, you and I know that. You and I know that. But I know there are parents out there who say, I wouldn't be where I was today if I didn't have MIT or Princeton on my resume. But you know what? It maybe it doesn't have to be undergrad, and it may not be there even if you're well qualified. So
Right. So, well, I guess, I think, I just want to wish Damian and his son the best of luck in this cycle. And I'm sure there's going to be some absolutely great colleges that would be thrilled to have.
He sounds like a wonderful young man.
Yeah. So we're big fans and we wish you all the best. And we hope that was helpful.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, it's time for the final part of my interview with Rick Clark and Brennan Barnard. And friends, I did this interview from Clemson, South Carolina at a hotel, and I was actually disrupted 3 times by the checkout lady knocking on my door. I asked for a late checkout, and I guess they just didn't register with them. So I kind of never came to really fully appreciate this interview until I was editing it. But I love this interview, and in the final part, Brennan and Rick continue to talk about legacy admissions, college athletes, and race-conscious admissions. They talk about where they see things going with the digital SAT. Do they think it will catch on and lead to more schools requiring test scores? You'll have to listen. Brennan and Rick talk about AI and machine learning and the role it may play in signaling to admission readers if they have a bias that is preventing them from making fair admissions decisions. Brennan talks about how AI can remove some of the basic reading functions so admission officers can spend more time on the human component. He also talks about how it may help college counselors. Rick returns to the topic of the business realities of admissions that people seldom talk about, but they are so important. Rick talks about how every deadline an admission office has is intentional. Rick talks about the political realities that often force an admission office to make decisions that are in the institution's long-term best interests. Rick tells us whether he thinks the admission process is a fair process. And Rick and Brennan close by sharing who their book, The Truth About College Admissions, is for and who it is not for. And finally, Rick and Brennan share feedback they heard about version 1 of their book as they traveled across the country. Listen and enjoy.
And, and I think we also need to look at so often the conversation around legacy or athletics or even race conscious admission kind of comes down to like, this is the thing that gets them in, right? And that these are not qualified applicants otherwise. And I think you need to kind of take a step back from that. And like some of the research that came out around legacy admission is that, it wasn't that they were taking students. It's not that they're taking students who aren't qualified for admission. I mean, if you look at some of the profiles of the students who are legacy admits, they're as strong or stronger than the average profile of that school. And so often is true with athletics too. And with race conscious admission. And so I think when you, especially in holistic admission, when you try to kind of take this kind of zero sum approach to it, it does not go well.
Points well taken. Let's talk about the digital SAT. We got a shorter version of the SAT, adaptive, but there's tremendous momentum in the direction of sort of test optional, away from scores. So how do you see this shaking out? Do you see the digital SAT catching on? Do you think the test optional momentum overpowers it and it's more of a blip or more of a non-factor? Where do you see things going with this digital SAT?
I would say it's a non-factor. I mean, it's it's still the SAT. It's still a test, and some students are going to do well on it. Some students aren't. Some students are going to have access to lots of resources to prep for it. It's still going to be an equity issue, and I just don't think, I just don't think it moves the ball. I mean, I think it's a positive thing that it's moving digital, but I don't think it changes the role of testing.
And I see Rick agreeing over here, it looks like. Anything you want to add to that, Rick?
I mean, I do agree with that. And I would also say it's a little bit back to what you said before about like the Supreme Court as an example, people who don't necessarily have as comprehensive an understanding of the work, making decisions that impact the work. Similarly, you think about some presidents, legislators, other people who are involved in dictating, let's say, merit-based scholarships and some of the ways that SATs are being used now. They have no clue there's going to be a digital SAT. They're just saying that you need to come up with a number and we're going to use that number and we're never going away from that concept of testing, right? Think about states like Florida or, the way there's sliding scales in Alabama for even the way they give money and things like that. So I think that, I'm with Brennan. Digital, not digital, adaptive, static, it's going to probably, whether a school decides to go test optional or go away from it is not going to live or die based on the format.
Let's talk AI. There's lots of things we could talk about AI. We could talk about AI when it relates to essays. And there's a whole conversation we could have there. I want to, feel free to share anything on that. But I want to ask you specifically, Rick, where do you see things going with AI being used in admission decisions by admission offices? And I know you guys have dabbled with it on the edges a little bit because I heard that podcast that you did. And so any thoughts on that, where you see that going, harmonizing the use of AI in a holistic process? Anything you want to share about that? Or you could also take it in the direction of AI and essays, whatever. I just want to know what you think about this. Yeah.
I'll real quick on the machine learning side of things. I do think that this is, I'm optimistic. I'm pretty bullish on the use of machine learning here. Some of these volume of applications and the number of outside readers has gotten to be pretty absurd on many levels. And really, again, for these super healthy schools where that doesn't seem to be changing, I actually would argue that the Supreme Court case actually might increase even, again, the applications to a number of those type of schools. I think machine learning can be really valuable. What we are talking to our folks here at Georgia Tech about is running AI next to our review. And so, we have a rubric, right? And we train our staff and we do norming to see if they are essentially lining up with each other. And we try to do that periodically through the cycle. I would like to get to a point where we can run that in real time, where you have a human reader and you have the AI coming next to it. And if there's a big divergence or disparity, that there's some type of a flag raised or some type of a marker put down, that checks you essentially. I think there's real positive, piece here for bias, that we are always looking for ways, and usually very human and very usually labor intensive ways to check bias. But I think this is where machine learning could actually really help us. And then, I think Brennan may be able to speak to this a little bit more, but the other place is for a student to actually get a little bit of assistance as they are working on the application. Be that through the Common App, be that through your own individual app or some other platform that runs alongside. I think this is where AI again can be. Again, what I've tried to draw a line between is to say, I'm not saying this will ever level the playing field. If you have absurd amounts of resources to people and products, just as much as this is true in our own regular life, it's true in college admission. But there is some democratization, there's some access gained, and I think there's some real benefit of where machine learning AI is going to be coming in very quickly in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And, I think both on the high school side and in admission, I think it has amazing power to remove some of the transactional aspects of college admission and make it more human, right? Like free us up to have more human contact, right? Take some of the pieces of the process. I mean, maybe it's for admission, maybe it's replacing some of the first reader kind of tasks of admission offices, and so their staff has more time to be doing outreach to students and having conversations with students. And for counselors, maybe it's doing some brainstorming around college essays through AI, and it allows counselors more time to work one-on-one with students, having conversations about their search or the family dynamics or, whatever it might be. So I think we just need to embrace it and find best practices for using AI.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Friends, I was a guest this week on another college podcast called The Student Manager, and I was asked a question about WUI, and it made me realize, snap, I haven't talked that much about WUI on here. I talked about it in the book I wrote, but not very much on this podcast. So over the next several weeks, either Linda or I, one of us, will be talking to you about these interstate tuition exchange programs, and WUI is the largest interstate regional tuition exchange program. WUI is actually an agreement with 16 members of WICHE, I know all these acronyms, which stands for the Western Interstate Commerce of Higher Ed. So what exactly is WUI? Well, 160 colleges participate, and eligible students can choose from hundreds of programs outside of their own home state, and they pay no more than 150% of that state's resident tuition. So the average savings for a WUI student last year was $11,294. In some cases, students saved over $15,000 because out-of-state tuition can often exceed 300% of the in-state resident rate. So for it to be capped at 150%, there's going to be substantial savings. Now, not every school participates in WUI. There's 160 colleges that participate amongst these 14 Western states. It is eligible for transfer students. It's something you complete an application once. You don't have to do it again for 4 years for bachelor's or 2 years because they do accept associate degrees as well. And each school can establish which programs they will allow to participate in WUI. And they also can cap the number of students that are eligible for the WUI discount. In some cases it's capped, in some cases it's not. Also, in some cases, in order to get WUI, you might have to have a higher academic performance than a typical student who's admitted. So not every admitted student necessarily can get this WUI discount either because the program is not eligible, a school doesn't participate, or it's capped, or they don't meet the eligible GPA. But a lot of people do. And each school, of course, decides which majors they allow to participate in WUI. If you're interested, you can go to wue.wiche.edu, or you can call 303-541-0267. But we're going to put a link up in the show notes with a one-page overview on WUI. It's a great opportunity to go out of state and not pay full tuition. Now return to our interview, Brennan Barnard and Rick Clark. All right, one last question on admissions, and then I want you to close with a little bit more information on your book. So I want to go back, Rick, to something you said that was really important, and I don't think we hung our hat there long enough. How a lot of times people forget that the lights still need to be on the business side of the school. Can you talk about some of the things that get done and maybe need to get done for certain schools, or their lights wouldn't be on, and therefore maybe you're comfortable with certain things because of the business realities that maybe the average parent just hasn't ever given much thought to? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I do think that like most people just see early decision as, well, this is a timeline, this is an option. And then, of course, the narrative gets out there. Sometimes it's accurate that the admit rates vary, and most of the focus stays on what is the strategy and what is the timeline and what needs to be done at what particular point for students. And of course, that's all they should and maybe need to be focused on. But I do think that without a doubt, every deadline a school has exists for a reason. You know, I'll give you a good example. I mean, here at Georgia Tech, like we broke Georgia away from out of state. And we largely did that because of competition. The University of Georgia was putting decisions out before us. They had weeks to work on their yield of our students. And we were losing because of that. And we needed to move that to be more in line, with them. And so these type of things play out for students, and most families don't think a whole lot about it. But that is exactly because, for instance, even politically, this all plays together. I mean, for us, we're going to be in a better spot with our legislator when we go to ask for money for projects if we're enrolling more students from more places around the state. And of course, the criticism that might come back to a school is, well, you're biased against, this particular school, or you're biased against this particular part of the state. When the reality is that these institutional priorities, the mission of the place, and also the just practical realities of running a institution, all play in. They play into deadlines. They play into admission decisions. They play into all of this. And so I guess I'll just go back to like the bridge too far for me. And what I just think is totally living in a different reality is donor admission and, the whole donor piece of things. Like, even if a school says that they are going away from using legacy admission, do you really think that a school that realizes that they can get a $50 million gift to put somebody's name on a new rec center that hundreds of kids are going to benefit, and that kid is generally in profile, but you have a 17% admit rate, like, you think they're really not going to take that money and it's not going to play into that's right. That's just like absurd. I mean, and yeah. I just, and even at places that are already healthy, that kind of thing is going to continue to happen. So they can say what they want in the press. But that's just a pipe dream.
And that can have ramifications for athletics. Like, you might think, why are you having this niche sport in having pre-reads through it? But you can be like, listen, we have alumni that are so passionate about that played that back in the day, and some of them give really, really big donations, and we're a stronger school as a result of that. And that might be the kind of thing that the public may not see, behind the scenes as well in certain instances.
And we talk about this in the book, and Brennan and I have written about it. And, people don't like to hear it, but the truth is that admission is not fair. It was never, ever created to be fair. And even for people that say, well, numbers are fair, go back to just using formulas. That's not fair either, because anybody like us that's done the work can give you all the reasons why there's not equity in the numbers. The kid that gets a private tutor and has 1,000 or 100 points higher on the SAT, the student that goes to a private school that's going to never give a C, all the different kinds of things that are happening, that where the numbers aren't even necessarily what you can trust. And so holistic admission isn't perfect, just like so many other things we talked about today. And admission absolutely is not fair. And that leads to why, we wrote the book to try to talk students through the things you can control and the things you cannot control.
Well said.
Honestly, if you're looking for a book that gives you the secret to kind of getting into the school of your dreams and kind of breaking the code, and a book that kind of preys on the fear that's out there in the media about kind of highly selective admission, this is not the book for you. It truly is not. I mean, if you're looking for a book that kind of walks you through the admission experience and talks about family and talks about how to have conversations and how to have a meaningful search, then pick it up, because I think you'll enjoy it and you'll enjoy the experience a lot more.
So we have parents, students, college counselors. Do you feel the book's good for all three? Is there a group in particular that you think, this would be really helpful for you? Like, who's the audience?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of college counselors have actually been using it kind of as their curriculum in their college counseling class, like we've heard from. And also, I think parents especially have it's really resonated with them, and some people have had kind of book discussions around it and things like that. And I think hopefully, if we're doing what we set out to do, it's kind of dialing down the achievement pressure and just kind of the mania around the experience.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely. I mean, Subtitle is a family guide to getting in and staying together. So it's geared towards students and parents. But, in a lot of our talks and certainly what we've heard back from counselors is, thank you for saying all the things we always say, but just doing it from a different seat, and that just going to carry, more weight. So it's giving cover oftentimes to counselors who are out there doing a great job on the ground, but they just need reinforcement from people who are practicing in other parts of the country.
What were the things you heard as you traveled around with the first book? What were the things that people said, boy, I'm glad you said this? And what were the things where they said, I wish this chapter wouldn't have been so thin, or you would have addressed this issue, that you said, you know what, we're going to do that in version 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and we talked about it earlier, is the financial aid piece and the money piece, right? And affordability, and we were limited on page numbers in the first edition. We wanted to kind of build that out, but just didn't have the space to do it, and so we interspersed it into other chapters. And so it was really nice to be able to kind of draw that out in this edition. And I think where we heard a lot of counselors and others say, we really appreciated this, was kind of that piece of like, what are some of the wedges of college admission? How does college admission kind of come into our family's space in a unhealthy way? And how can we not have that happen?
This has been awesome, guys. And, for people who said, I really like these guys, I'd like to hear more of them. Obviously, one option is definitely the book. Why don't you each share some of the other forms you're using to get word out on college admissions? Because I know both of you have a couple other ways of getting truth out.
Yeah, I mean, we have the podcast that we do together every other week, and we have the website that you can put in the show notes. And I do some writing for Forbes on college admission, and we're both pretty active on social media, Twitter and Facebook. And Rick has an amazing blog on Georgia Tech about admission.
And the name of your podcast, if anyone hasn't heard it?
The Truth About College Admission podcast. Got to stay
Awesome.
on brand, Mark.
I know. I want to make sure that you get the word out on that. I'm all about staying on brand. No, listen, guys, this has been great. Thank you. I know how busy you are. I know how in demand you are around the country. And listeners, Brennan and I, we worked together at the Westtown School with Susan Tree, 2001 to 2004. Brennan introduced me to Rick. He said, you need to meet Rick Clark. And next thing you know, I was down at Georgia Tech, and Rick and I have developed our own relationship. I really appreciate you guys, and thank you for coming on for the third time.
Well,
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
all you do, Mark.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, be well.
And now it's time for our college spotlight of the week.
Friends, hopefully you heard last week's episode where Linda and Lisa talked about the University of Dayton, and Lisa gave a breakdown of her recent visit on a college visit program she attended. We'll now resume with the final part.
They do have a core. So, and one of the things that you do have to take is 2 religion and 2 philosophy classes as part of your curriculum, but they're really flexible in what they define. So, I mean, the religion classes are almost more like a world religion focus. You can choose those. And the philosophy ones, are also similarly like, the philosophy of, music or things like that are more flexible. Then you're not just going to be sitting down with your day card, slogging through.
So it's really classes. It's not, come and be converted kind of thing.
No.
Yeah.
I don't suppose it's a secret to anyone that I really had a very odd agnostic upbringing with my parents who, just said some very ironic things to me as a young kid, which I believed wholeheartedly. And it just kind of messed me up. So anyway, I've always felt a little uncomfortable in many religious spaces, but I did not feel uncomfortable at all at the University of Dayton. And I just felt like it was a very kind, welcoming, accepting place.
Nice.
So, I mean, I just didn't get that feel where I could not say that about every place that I've been.
Sure.
So in terms of student life, most people live on campus all 4 years. So it gives a really nice sense of community. They have some dorms. They have some traditional dorms for freshmen, maybe a couple suite style. But the last, like maybe your senior year, your junior, senior, they bought all these like houses that they're like these cute little townhouses that are all in a line, and they have these cute little front porches, and the university owns like 90% of them. And so a lot of times they're furnished and you live in a student neighborhood house. And that is a place where whenever I talk to students, they really talked about how much they love their house, they love their neighborhood, they love their neighbors. And even alumni, when they come back, they want to go back and visit the house that they stayed at.
Oh, that makes me happy.
It's really cute.
Now, I have to ask you about the housing, because one thing I read about was the PATH program and how you go into the housing lottery for some of these things.
Yeah, you got to go into your activities. You got to go you get higher in the lottery the more stuff you do on campus.
I love this idea. I'm like, oh, this is good parenting advice.
Yeah, I should be like that with my kids. You can get out of the basement by... Oh, you want a bathroom? Well, then you're going to have to do...
That's funny.
So, yeah, but, so they do have... That's a really cute... I think it's a really, good strategy to get people involved on campus and make sure they're not staying at home. Greek life comprises about 30% of the students, and that also includes not just like the social fraternities and sororities, but career-based fraternities. So, and sports are big, although the stadiums are off campus, but they are NCAA Division I. I think I said that right. And I knew NCAA. This is so bad. Mark is probably just editing this, just like smacking his head.
I know. He's like, have I taught these two nothing about sports? Nothing.
He's tried. We just don't listen. That's the problem. He's gone on for literally hours about college sports with me, and none of it stuck. It's terrible. But anyway, basketball. They have basketball. They have football, they have volleyball, track and field, and I think they do pretty well. And the kids will take the bus and they'll have a shuttle and they'll go watch their teams play. So, yeah, I mean, so that's kind of an interesting thing too. Like the people just seem really involved in the school. And I felt like that was like one of the largest strengths of the school is the sense of community that everyone talked about there. So it's interesting because it's like 51% men, 49% women. like, which in colleges is a little unusual. A lot of times it skews female.
I think it's that high percentage of engineering.
Yeah, you get the engineering in there. Yeah. And so I know they are making a big push to recruit more underrepresented populations. They talked about it, that, they are, of course, they're going to follow the letter of the law regarding Supreme Court's decision, but they don't plan on changing much else. And they will definitely be looking to make their campus more diverse, which is probably a good thing, because walking around there was a lot of white people. There were a lot of very nice, happy looking white people. And I'm sure that, that it would be probably a more enriching experience for everyone, the more diversity they could get on campus. So, questions?
So you talked about how they are really focused on not being racist, and yay. I'm just curious, for admissions, do they have college specific essay requirements, or?
I don't think so, but that's a good question, and it's probably one we should look up right now and answer.
I do not see any supplemental essay requirements for the University of Dayton. And
Okay.
I believe I have just gone through every tab.
Okay. Well, if it's in there, folks, we're sorry we missed it, but to the best of our knowledge, there's no supplemental essay. But they are test optional, except if you're a nursing student. They have early action and regular decision. And so if you want to apply to nursing, then you've got to keep the November 1st deadline. And so the overall acceptance rate is 81% for the school, but nursing is obviously much more selective than that. They did mention that they really want students to go in having completed pre-calculus for business or engineering. They were basically like, please don't take statistics instead of pre-calculus if you want to be. That was something that I heard from every school. If you want to be an engineer or in business, take calculus.
Yeah.
That we visited. So yeah, they definitely wanted that. They found that their students do better with that. They give a fair amount of merit aid at the University of Dayton. And I think 89% of students will get some type of merit aid, and the scholarships average in the $27,000 mark. And they have, you have to keep up your grades. You can't just go there and flunk out of school. But they have a lot of different scholarships. One interesting scholarship is that if you go and visit the campus and you file your FAFSA, then they'll give you a textbook scholarship, and that'll be a $500 credit at the bookstore each semester where you can rent or buy your books. So,
that is not insignificant. I mean, $500 a semester, that's, well, I'd like to say it's generous, but depends, I guess, on the textbooks.
Yeah, but I mean, some of those like engineering and math textbooks can, add up, I think. So they are a FAFSA school. So like all the FAFSA schools on our tour, they are kind of like, we're hoping that we get this December 1st, and then we can give people their financial aid awards as soon as possible, but who knows?
Who knows? So no CSS profile for this school,
No,
is that right?
No, yes. So they're a FAFSA school. And so they have they talk about the ways that they make a difference in lowering cost. And one is they give you a 4-year outlook. So when you are given your financial aid package, they tell you how much it's going to cost for the next 4 years. So they're not going to be surprised by like Elon's 9% tuition hike, that happened between year 1 and year 2 for my daughter. Although I suppose that wasn't particularly a surprise. And so, they don't have any hidden fees. They have the textbook scholarship, and they also have a lot of study abroad options where your financial aid can go with you. So the cost of attendance is $67,000, but like I said, I would be surprised if very many people actually paid $67,000 to go to the University of Dayton. So I think it's a school that accepts a pretty wide variety of student, except in nursing. Now, I asked some of the other consultants. There's one in particular who is based in Cleveland who should go to the school, and her son goes to University of Dayton, and he came to visit her when we were walking through campus, and he came up and gave her a hug, and it was honestly just the most touching, sweet thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, kids, you got my kids. You got to beat that. I want that. But it was just so sweet and lovely. He seemed like just such a nice kid. And so she said that she felt like it's these kids who are strong students, but maybe they're not like the top of the, class or not the highest flyers, but they're outgoing and they are, they're the kind of people who are going to do stuff and achieve things, rather than someone who's in an ivory tower, and just reading and thinking about things. So I think that, everyone said, I think that you have to want to participate in college life if you're going to be happy at the University of Dayton. Number one, you'll be in a closet in the back of the dorm if you don't. But number two, you're not going to have very much fun, and everything is sort of, the life is outside in the community. And so you really have to be committed to participating in that if you decide to go there. But I think, someone who's interested in any of their strong programs, business, engineering, nursing, education, and, who really likes that, it's definitely one to consider, especially if you are Catholic and you want a supportive place to really continue in your faith and practice your faith. I mean, just being able to walk, 1 minute to, the Catholic chapel on campus, I think that's really powerful, and if that a spiritual life is important to you, then I think that would be really good. Who do I think maybe shouldn't go? Well, I didn't see any goth kids there. I'm not saying they weren't there. I just didn't see them. And
they were probably at a secret meeting,
that counts for housing, but it's the goth meeting. Yeah. And so I think if you were like hugely progressive and, you really want a place where people are super politically motivated and they're going to be, activists. I didn't get that sense. I got the sense that these are people who like to play cornhole, and which is a perfectly lovely thing to do.
Who doesn't, Lisa? Who doesn't love a good game of cornhole?
I'm really bad at cornhole, so not me, but
well, me too. But that doesn't mean I don't still, participate.
Right. So, I mean, it didn't strike me as a school where there's this huge amount of activism. So maybe if that's something you're really interested in, that might not be for you. And then if you are the kind of kid who wants to spend all your time at the library, and to here I'm referencing most people I went to college with, then you might not have as good a time as here because not everyone is going to be in that library with you like they were in the Regenstein library with me. So, that would be, somebody who I would think about. And then, if you want merit aid, if your family needs merit aid to make college affordable, this is another great option. Dayton's like an hour from Cincinnati. So, and I think it's maybe 2 or 3 hours from Cleveland. So Cincinnati probably is going to be your airport. I think for travel, the airport is actually really huge. I was surprised.
Cincinnati? Yeah. And Dayton has an airport, but not quite the same.
Yeah. So, but all in all, I was really impressed by the University of Dayton, and I think it could be a great school for a lot of kids. And it's not one that is in the conversation all the time. So I definitely wanted to point it out.
No, I agree. Not in the conversation a lot. And I think what a great option for students who, especially for those engineering programs, that's maybe not as competitive, like as Case Western, a couple hours away, but still terrific programs. I love that so many students are living on campus. When you hear 70% or whatever you said, that to me, that just sounds like, oh, happy students live on campus and, they're not moving off. So, and that D1 sports, I know that's very attractive to a lot of students.
Right.
It sounds like a great place. And I love the size of the school. I think that's such
it's a great size.
Nice
it's
size.
That under between 4,000 and 10,000 size. I feel like it's just you're going to get all the advantages of big school, but you're not going to get lost. You're going to have smaller class sizes. Students did mention they might have the occasional lecture class with 100 students in it for an intro class, but by the time they got into their major, their classes were very small.
Yeah.
So, I think I didn't put this in my notes, but I know that research is something that they do offer a lot of for undergraduates too. So there's that opportunity if you're interested in that as well.
Sounds great. Thank you, Lisa.
No, I wish I could get more students to consider the state of Ohio, because the state of Ohio, folks, it has a lot of phenomenal schools. And I don't know what y'all think is going on in Ohio, but it is no different than any other part of this country. So it's not something to be avoided. I don't understand why, like there's some beautiful parts of Ohio. There's some not beautiful parts of Ohio, but Cleveland is really, it has had a real resurgence. It has a cute downtown. I mean, Cincinnati, is really coming back. It's a foodie destination. I think Ohio does not get the credit it deserves as a state when it comes to college admissions.
I'm really struggling here as a Michigander to say nice things about Ohio. But yeah, okay. I'll buy everything you said. Yes.
I'm just saying you could do worse. You could do worse. And so given that there's so many high quality schools, many of which offer nice merit aid and are affordable for, those middle class families that aren't going to get need-based aid but cannot afford to spend $90,000 a year, which is like almost a lot of people in this country. Ohio has a lot of great options, and, University of Dayton is one of them, as well as many others. And please look into it. That is just my pro-Ohio plug.
Agreed. There, I said it. I agree. Ohio, take a look.
Did that hurt? Did that hurt, Linda?
I probably have some family members who are picking up the Linda voodoo doll right now, but that's okay.
So is there really a Michigan, Ohio? I mean, I'm just so oblivious to all these things.
Every state has that kind of, rivalry. And I'm sure it has something to do with, football or something like that. But yeah, it's Ohio that we have issues with, not the other states. It's Ohio.
That's
just like in Missouri, up here, it's Kansas that we have issues with. But down in southern Missouri, it's usually Arkansas, but Kansas, Missourians, I don't know what the problem is with Kansas, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, growing up in St. Louis, it was always like we were Missouri and the rest of the state was Missouri and they all hated us. So I just felt extruded by the whole state, really.
So let me just clarify, because my family is from that southern part. So listeners, I grew up in Michigan and I have family in southern Missouri. We didn't think about St. Louis people at all.
At all.
Sorry,
yeah.
Lisa. We didn't think
That's
about
okay.
y'all.
It's okay. I like to fly under the radar. So, but yeah, I mean, it's funny because I live, in living in Chapel Hill and Durham, where my kids go to school. I am arguably around the biggest, school rivalry of all time. And I just can't get excited about it. Again, it's that sports thing that Mark has failed to inspire in me, because my kids are like, well, are we for Chapel Hill? Are we for Duke? I'm like, you will be whatever is expedient to you in that situation. We will be whatever anyone wants us to be, because we don't care. So, but that has nothing to do with University of Dayton. Check it out, folks. It's a fantastic place to look.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Linda,
Thanks,
for
Lisa.
going on this little journey with me.
Absolutely.
Friends, on Monday's episode, I'm going to do something I've never done before. Of course, you're used to my admissions tips, but the whole first part of Monday's episode will be a giant admissions tip, as I'm going to do a panoramic view and let you see how colleges use their natural geographic advantages in the college admission process. And then we'll be transitioning to a brand new interview I'm very excited about. Lisa's doing an interview with Andrea Brenner. And she's the author of How to College. And she's somebody we sought out and we asked her to come on the podcast, having heard her speak before. She's going to give you a lot of tips into how to be successful at college. Former college professor who's turned to writing on the topic of what students can do to be successful in college. It's a 3-parter. We think you're going to really enjoy it. And we're really excited about it. And friends, I told you I'm going to close 15 episodes in a row with a quote on the personal statement. This one comes from Kim Bryant, the Assistant Director of Admissions, University of Michigan, and she simply says this: I like reading a personal story that is tied to real life. I like it when I can hear a student's voice. Storytellers are always good. See you on Monday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 15. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Linda Depker, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joyce Ducker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stalianos Dimitriou. And if you want to have a coaching session with Lisa, Linda, or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Our favorite method is for you to record your own voice at speakpipe.com/YCBK. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcasts. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Monday and Thursday.